think the Vow of the Disciple raid is a bit too easy. Let me explain. Now, this entire mentality is coming from the fact that I went in with my semi-regular raid group. We were down 2 people because they had prior engagements. So we're running in with 4 people. We're thinking we're gonna have LFG, but hey, we do the preservation mission all the time. It's a couple extra abominations. Let's just do the first encounter 4-man. That's super easy. And then we got to the first encounter and we're thinking like, well, we have enough. We have 4 people. If one person has an eager edge sword and does the skating and just moving between everything, and we have everybody else on pillars, we might be able to do 4 people there too. So we figured we'd give it the one try, and lo and behold, we got it. So we moved on. And then we got the caretaker, and we're thinking like, there's no way that we could put out the amount of damage that this boss requires. Like, there are definite phases that you have to hit in this boss in order to progress, right? Like, there's no way that 4 people would be able to do that. Well, we figured, well, our best chance of doing that is if one person runs Gjallarhorn and one person runs Divinity. So that's what we did, and again, lo and behold, we got it done. We went through Last Stand. We did everything the right way. We had a little bit of a chunk left over on our last phase that we did just before Last Stand, but we had saved so much heavy ammo in that stage that we were able to burst down Caretaker without any sort of problems. So then where do the issues begin in this raid? When does it start to become a 6-man activity like it should feel, right? And we're not great players. Like, we're good players. We can do the high-end content. It might take, we're not speedrunners or anything like that. It might take us a little bit more time to do the things than you might see like your top 1% of Destiny players playing. And we're by far not the most 100% hardcore into Destiny. We are around the close to maxing out, if not just slightly over maxed out their season pass rank. There's people that have over 300 level already. Where does it start becoming a problem? From my perspective, I don't know if it does. Now, we didn't test it all the way through. Once we got to the relic encounter, after the parkour and everything, we did end up picking up 2 extra people. We tried the relic encounter with 4 people and we got pretty far in it, but we only tried it the one time and then we got the extra 2 people. We didn't want to waste too much time trying to figure it out, but I honestly think that you could probably do it relatively easily too. Keep in mind that this entire raid, we hadn't wiped once up until that point. Like, we had 4 people throughout that entire raid and haven't wiped up until relic encounter. And when I look back, like, I haven't been huge into Destiny over this its long tenure of a game, but I've been in and out, and I've done a couple clears of Deepstone. And when I compare it to that, and you have the original encounter, and then you have the Atrax fight, the famous Atrax fight, then you have final boss, right? And I keep thinking, like, there's no way that you would be able to do Atrax with 4 people as reliably as we did it at a team of our skill level. I'm sure it can be done, but I would never want to try personally with our team Atrax with 4 people. So then you look at other stuff and you're like, okay, well, the first encounter too in Deepstone, when you have the 2 sides and everything, like, it would be pretty tough to be able to run 4 people. It would be doable in theory with all the mechanics that are there, but knowing that encounter, it would be pretty tough. I'm gonna look at Vow of Disciple. Okay, so you get to the relic encounter. What is the main drawback? What is the main drawback that prevents you in the relic encounter from being able to do it reliably with less than 6 people? Well, it's the timer on the relics. The issue there comes up when you can just shoot a rocket at your feet, get revived, and you're good to go. So all you really need to make sure of is that the person that's dying is somebody on the team still has a res, that they can pick up that teammate, and you have something that can kill yourself. I think that there's also another strategy where you can just simply wait out as long as you can on the timer and try to pick something up again. Like, it honestly doesn't seem like you would need more than 4 people. If you wanted to stretch it, you could probably even do it with just 3. Now that would be the limit for that encounter, but that's just crazy to me that you could basically do all the way up to final boss with just 4 people rather reliably if you have a team that doesn't die very often. That's the only requirement you would really need. Don't expend your heavy ammo too quickly and don't die very often. And then you look at Rolk, right? So the main thing that I can see coming up here that I haven't tested yet myself, but I really want to, is can 4 people put out enough damage on Rolk that they can get rid of him before his enrage starts? Right, you have 3 damage phases to be able to actually get him down before the 4th phase you'll have enrage. And I think about it, I don't think that there's a mechanic in there that would require you having more than 4 people, because you simply need 2 people. If you're using the double dunk method, you would just need 2 people to have the buff that gets split between the team, and you would need somebody to read callouts. That already happens with 4 people, right? Like typically in a 6-man team, you'll have your 2 people that are dedicated to splitting the buff and holding it, and then you have your 2 people dunking, and you have your 2 people ad clearing and reading off the callouts. Who's to say that the ad clearing and callouts couldn't happen from the people that are holding the buff and splitting? There's no reason necessarily. You could still do the double dunk method with 4 people. The main question is going to be whether you can put out enough damage and get enough ammo back to be able to push Rolk into that last stand and kill him before enrage comes up. And the ads there that they put into that final boss arena, they're nothing to write home about. They're pretty squishy monsters, right? There's a lot of scions in there, there's a couple abominations, but aside from that, a little bit of Void 3.0 thrown into there and everything's dead. So I genuinely think that you really only need 4 people to complete a 6-man activity like it was designed to be. Now, we're obviously not talking about contest mode. Obviously on contest mode, you need to be able to have the damage output of 6 players to be able to keep up with what's coming at you. I'm sure there's people that tried it with 4 people, but it would be extremely hard. And I just can't think of a recent raid that came up that, if somebody said that we were going to 4-man something, that I would be like, okay, sure, sounds good, instead of immediately having a gut-wrenching feeling of like we're going to die. So how would I change it? That's the next question. How would I change the encounters to be a little bit more impactful and a little bit more chaotic and just a little bit more engaging, right? Because if I'm being quite honest, a lot of people like to play video games on kind of a relaxed setting, and that's fine. That's fine. Destiny has a lot of different playlists and activities that you can do, lean back in your chair and half paying attention to what's going on, because you can kind of run an autopilot. But I really don't think that is the place for raids. The only thing that's actually part of the Vow Disciple that requires you right now to take a lot of your attention span into the game is memorizing all of the different signs and callouts. So again, what would I change that would force you to want to have 6 players? I'm not talking about mechanics that force you. I'm talking about why you would want 6 players over 4. Let's completely avoid the entrance. I'm okay with the entrance not taking that much, because obviously we have the preservation mission. That entire area is kind of slightly harder in the raid version, but it's fine where it is, in my opinion. In the first encounter, maybe something I would like to see is simply moving the objects that open and close the doors to a spot that the obelisks can't readily see. That's one of the things, right? Is when your runner needs the door open for them, then somebody has to look from their obelisk, but it's just you can look from your obelisk at the door opener. If it was just around a wall or something that none of the obelisks could really see, and there was a bunch of ads that spawned from there, I think that would make a lot more sense. Because then all of a sudden now you need at least one extra person. Because if somebody has to run away from their obelisk, as it is right now, it is very, very detrimental to your team. Like, if you have no more reses on your team, somebody goes down, you have to run from your obelisk, chances are you are going to lose a lot of time, if not fail the encounter, because you're leaving your obelisk undefended. Putting those door open and closes into somewhere that isn't readily available to those obelisk protectors, I think would go a long way in at least pushing the number up to 5 people that you would want. I'd also like to see a little bit more ad spawns. They don't have to be huge ads or anything, or even changing the spawns of some ads so that they're not in front of the player, but they can also be behind, right? And because right now, from an obelisk perspective, once you run that obelisk one time, you kind of have it figured of where the 4 spawn points of enemies can possibly be, and you kind of have your rhythm going of which way you're going to shoot. What are you going to use a grenade for this set of enemies? Do you need to use a grenade? And so on and so forth. The only thing right now that makes it a tiny bit complicated is there's one unstoppable ogre that spawns on your side of the obelisk per round. That's it. So I think changing where that door open and close is would go a long way in changing that encounter, along with changing where the spawn points of enemies are, because then you kind of have to have your head on a swivel. I don't know about you, but anybody who has done that encounter, if you're covering an obelisk, you're essentially looking in one direction. You don't have to look in the other ones. Caretaker is the tougher one to change, because the way that we ran it was effectively having one person run in for runes, 2 people stunning, and 1 person outside to open and close the door and clear some ads. That's how we divvied up our 4-man team when we did it. And even spawning the ads, like the ads spawn in good places, they're all around the map sort of thing, and there's snipers that you have to worry about. There's yellow health enemies that go for the obelisk or the players, and then obviously you have the different levels that put some farther away than others and across gaps. Like, it's a tougher one to decide where the change is needed, aside from just how much damage is done. And I think that might just be the honest best solution to require 6 people in that encounter, as much as I hate to say it. And it's not about giving health gates. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is just give Caretaker some more health. With the current meta that's out right now, I think it's just too easy to burst him down when you need to. Even the fact that you have to stand on plates to do damage, and the inability to use Thunder Crash on him and stuff like that, that doesn't even help him in this case, right? You can still use rockets and everything. Maybe one change that I would look at is bringing Caretaker closer so you can't use rockets, because I can tell you right now, we've done multiple runs using rockets. The only times that we ever actually hurt ourselves with our rockets has been when we shoot each other by accident. So maybe bringing Caretaker a little bit closer to the players whenever you're in damage phase and giving him a little bit more health. For the relic encounter, it's pretty well done. I really like the relic encounter. It feels already chaotic, especially with 4 people, but I believe something has to be done with the debuffs on that. And I don't mean try to make it so the debuff will stay with you when you're dead. I think if you're willing to shoot a rocket at your feet and take an L for the team, there's a lot that has to be able to be done there. You have to have some way to remove yourself from playing, and also have a way of reviving yourself, which you have a limited amount in the raid, right? So I'm not too upset about that. I'm more upset about the other way that you can go, which is just wait out the timer. I would like to see that timer to be a little bit longer, so that you at no point have the option to pick up another relic after you just put one down, unless you have to cheese it a little bit, if you will, and find a way to damage yourself. That's how I would change that one. Now, Relk, because I've never tested it, I'm not really sure what could be done in order to be able to effectively do it. I would say put in some more difficult ads. That would be the first thing. And not ads that necessarily require heavy ammo, but, you know, take a playbook from the first couple encounters and start putting in yellow health bar lurkers more commonly in that encounter, right? Like the shielded enemies that are just a little bit of a pain to deal with every once in a while. Those kind of enemies go a long way in making an encounter more difficult and a little bit more chaotic, because people are trying to get rid of them. They're not the easiest to go down. Sometimes you miss your shots, etc, etc. For the Relk fight itself, I think it's pretty well done. I just think that there's not enough ads. The few thrall that it spawns are okay, but I think that after a certain stage, maybe you don't have to worry about a crit, you have to worry about a slightly harder enemy that spawns. And I think that would go a long way in just pushing up the requirement of you wanting to have 5 to 6 players instead of being able to go through the entire thing with just 4. And there will still be the people in the top 1% of the community that are able to do it with just 4 people. But it really does feel like that this raid was kind of figured out with contest mode in mind. And then as soon as they turned that difficulty down, it was no longer difficult. And I'm like you guys, right? I want to be able to have an okay experience. I don't want to have to beat my head up against a wall every time that I go into a raid, right? But I do think that raids belong in the realm of like Grandmaster Nightfalls. Why are we looking at different encounters to be more endgame than the raid itself? The raid, in my opinion, should be the pinnacle of your endgame. It should be the reward that you get. You finally get to go to for these rare rewards. It's just Bungie, I think, is trying to cater a little bit too much to maybe the casual players that don't have enough time to play. And that's unfortunate to me, because I think the raids are one of the best pieces of content that Destiny has to offer. So it should be in that endgame slot. I can tell you right now, I have more difficulty completing the Master Vox Obscura quest than I do completing any Val the Disciple raid. Sometimes I have a harder time completing a 100k Nightfall, just a regular Nightfall on Legend, than I do at any point in time during the Val the Disciple raid. And I don't think that's the right spot for it. So overall, I do think it is a nice raid. I do think that it is, for the most part, well designed. I would just like to see it a little bit tougher and a little bit more endgame feel, if you know what I mean. I'll use another comparison just to drive my point home. I would have had more trouble going through the Legend campaign in Witch Queen than running through Vow of the Disciple first time. And I do not think that puts it in the right spot. Anyways, if you have opinions on this, if you don't agree with mine, if you do agree with mine, I'd love to hear them. I try to respond to any comments that I can. And if you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe and the bell thing. And I'll see you in the next one.